We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships.
This is the Couples Academy Show. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. Grab your mic and let's get into this conversation. How you doing this morning, Danielle?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. My name is Hassani. This is my wife, Danielle. And we are the Couples Academy Show, and we're glad to have you with us here this morning. It is Monday. It means that you should have had a phenomenal weekend doing what you do. That's what we do.
We try.
Every weekend. But we want to welcome you wherever you are. Listen, we want to acknowledge those who are live, but for those who are watching the replay, we acknowledge who you are. We get calls, we get emails, we get texts all the time, and I'm blown away. Oh my God, you watched the show? You're in Bucharest. Oh my God, you watched the show? You're right around the corner from us. How did you find out about it? So it's amazing to be able to have this family grow and be able to have a global impact on the people.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, listen, before we get started.
Do you want them to like, share, and subscribe yet?
I was about to say that. You want to say that?
Yeah. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. That way you will not lose a notification. You won't miss a show. You know, I've been gone so long, I feel like you've taken over the whole show because you're so used to me not being here.
But I'm glad you're back.
I don't want to take over, but I just might. I think they like it what I do.
Is that what? Do you guys like it when she takes over? I don't know. I don't think they like that takeover spirit. We ain't gonna do that this morning. No.
Yeah, they do. They like it.
No. All right, guys. You know we have a couple events coming up. November the 12th through the 14th is the last chance weekend. You want to be there, okay? So some of you are new. You don't know what that is. I actually had somebody who reached out and said, "Listen, I want to find out more about your programs and your events. We just found out about you yesterday. We've been binge watching, so we're glad to have you. But November the 12th through the 14th, you need to be there. It's going to be right here in Milton, Georgia at our retreat center. We have up to 6 couples who join us here, but then we have sometimes others that join us virtually, and we work on the restoration of your relationship. So if you've been impacted by an affair, if you are on the verge of divorce, if you are a couple in crisis and you just don't know what to do, this is the place you need to come to get exactly what you need."
Are you going to share it with them a testimonial today?
I shared one with them.
Oh, okay. I mean, the people that come here to this retreat center, they are blown away by the transformation, y'all. You've seen the testimonials. They come here believing that it's going to work for everybody else and not them. And every time, they can't believe the transformation that happens in just 3 days. So if you're in crisis, let us know. Reach out. Don't just stay in your situation. Make sure that you reach out and get the help that you need.
Check out this video, and we'll be back on the other side to start the show. All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. This is the Couples Academy show. That was the last chance weekend. We want to make sure that you sign up. But listen, just say hello to the people before we jump in.
Absolutely. There's so many people tuning in early this morning. Angel Hummel, welcome. Clarence Jackson, good morning. Ralph Welsh, Sherry Rayford, Vashawn Edmondson in Chicago. Save Dunn is, hey, that's the Gonzalez family in Jewel. Hey, guys. Charlene, good morning. Olawajupi, that's Jamoke. I still can't get that right. You're gonna have to help me out with that, Jamoke. Kylisa, hello. Andrea, Miss Jewel, Angel, Nurse Joy, Carlisa, Ralph, everybody's tuning in this morning. Fedlina, good morning to everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in so early.
So this morning we're talking about a powerful topic that we think is long overdue. We cover so many different things. We just got out of an open marriage series, and we were talking about ultimately opening up your marriage and having sex outside of the marriage and then bringing others into the marriage. And so to me, the perfect transition would be a conversation about what sexual addiction, because it's a real thing.
It is.
And we've
it's
talked
plaguing so many families. So many of the couples that we are dealing with are dealing with sexual addiction and not knowing what to do about it, because the person that is dealing with the sexual addiction, they don't know what to do about it. A lot of times they don't know where it came from themselves. So this is going to be a really powerful show, because we're going to help you understand what it is and then where it comes from. We're going to take our time unpacking it.
We're going to take our time, and see, the reality is, while many people do struggle with it, a lot of times people are falsely accused of something that they don't have. It's because I don't have a strong libido and you do, then you must be a sex addict. Or because you are unfaithful, the first thing we do is say, well, you must be addicted to sex, and that is not the case. And so you have all types of battles in relationships over what it is and what it's not, and that presents some of the problem. So we want to take our time and unpack this thing for you in a way that makes sense. And so there's no better way to do that than to start off with a comprehensive definition. And by definition, sexual addiction is defined as a lack of control over sexual thoughts, urges, and impulses. It is a behavior that is done in excess and significantly impacts one's life in a negative way. They have to have a compulsive need to be sexually stimulated. That's the definition. So it's someone who has a desire, it impacts their life in a negative way, and there's this urge, there's this need. Just like, when you're doing drugs, you got to get that high, you got to get that fix, you got to get that release. Likewise, many people use different forms of sexual behavior to get that same release.
Right, and that's what I'm saying by it. They may not have known that it was a sexual addiction until their spouse put the tag on them, because for them, they just have this sex drive. They are driven internally. It's insatiable. They need to have this sex. And so for them, I just have a high sex drive. They've always thought they've had a high sex drive, and maybe they thought that their spouse had a lower sex drive. It's when they start stepping into inappropriate behaviors that it starts to take a different shape.
Yeah. And we want to take the time to really explain to you what an addiction is, because an addiction shows up in two major ways. You have what are called behavioral addictions, and you also have chemical addictions. Now, chemical addictions would be more like your alcohol or your drug or even food, right? Eating food. But a behavioral addiction could be sex, could be gambling. Once again, food is in that category because it's kind of split between the two, because, the reason why food isn't a chemical addiction, because think about sugar, right? That's a chemical. It drives you because you have this insatiable desire. So it fits in the behavioral addiction as well as excessive, involvement in the internet, and the list goes on and on and on. And so the reality is, when you're dealing with behavioral and sexual addictions, the one commonality that they have is that they tap into a certain part of the brain. And in this particular part of the brain, when you engage in these behaviors, what you're doing is you're cementing a behavior into your what they call neural pathways. There's neural pathways in the brain that are constantly being tapped into and triggered, and there's a reward, there's a release when you engage in these particular behaviors, and it releases something called dopamine. Now, we've talked about dopamine before. It's that feel-good chemical that's released. Now, this is what's interesting when it comes to this dopamine thing, because we're all made up of chemicals. That's what we are. And so if you eat a good meal, like a really, really, really good meal, it will raise your dopamine 50%. If you have sex, it raises your dopamine 100%.
That makes sense.
If you drink alcohol, it raises your dopamine 100%.
Doesn't that surprise
Why was
you?
that?
Because alcohol could be depressing, you know. But that's interesting.
But it can bring you down, but it taps into your dopamine, which makes you feel good. It's a reward. It's like it's a craving. It's like, oh, I got my drink. When you're stressed, you drink wine. When you want to get rid of your problems, you go to the bottom. You know, but. Methamphetamines, when you engage in that type of behavior, it raises your dopamine 1,100%.
That is terrifying, because when you're raising it, that means you got to come down that much, right? So if I go up to 1,100% dopamine, right? I'm on a high. Ooh, the crash.
Right.
That's why you have to have more to get yourself up to even a normal level.
Yes, that's very true. Now, even though the dopamine is much higher when it comes to this drug than, say, when it comes to sex, it has been said by many experts that a sex addiction is harder to break than a cocaine addiction, than an alcohol addiction. Why? Well, number one, when you're dealing with sex specifically, and food specifically, they are both drives or needs that we have for survival. Like you cannot survive without food. You have to eat. But it's about the excessiveness of how much you eat. You cannot procreate and extend life without sex. So it's a necessary a part of the process for creation. So these are two drives, or these are two behaviors that we absolutely need. But the other thing about it is, when you think about alcohol, alcohol is a liquid in a bottle. It is what it is, what it is. When you think about a drug, because you want to get that fix, you're not like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. But oftentimes when we seek food out, we're looking for food that looks good and smells good and has all of the things that we desire and crave for. It's not just a meal.
A bag of salad with
exactly.
Right. You want the thing that's greasy and dripping and
So there's an attractive element to it. You know, when it comes to sex, you know, we want to be with someone that we're physically drawn to and appealing and looks good and smells good. So these are different drives.
With sex addiction, right? When they get to the sex addiction level, it just doesn't matter. A hole is a hole at that point. Literally.
Did you say a hole is a hole?
Yeah, I did.
And a toe is a toe?
Yes.
All right, well, listen. I mean, there are layers.
Right? There are layers to
sure.
it. But that makes a lot of sense that, you know, when it comes to the sex drive and the food drive, when people hear that makes sense to them because it is a physical, actual need, right? And so if I have a need for sex, now how do I govern it and get it under control if maybe I do have a higher sex drive or more testosterone, whatever the hormones are that make you have a higher sex drive, plus my experiences that may have contributed to me having this unnatural relationship with sex.
Yeah. So we're talking this morning about the 10 signs of sex addiction so that you can properly assess. And let me just say, in the description of this video, guys, in the description, there is a link and I want you and your spouse to go to it. It is a sex addiction test. You take the test, you answer certain questions, and it lets you know if you are a sex addict or what risk you are at of being a sex addict, from a low scale to a very high scale. And that's why I say it's important to understand that there are levels to this thing, right? If you I was going to say something, but it's too early in the morning. I don't even want to say that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. It would have been funny,
he's
but
saying don't say it, then we don't want to say it.
But
go to number one.
Let's go to number one. Let's do it.
Okay, number one, a sexual acts with multiple partners. Sex addictions are often unable to remain loyal to their partners due to their insatiable sexual appetite. This usually results in them engaging in risky behaviors such as cheating and engaging in sexual acts with multiple partners. Risky is the operative word here, because those who sleep around tend to have a much higher risk of contracting sexual transmitted diseases. So that's a big deal, right? Because now it's so insatiable and your spouse can't give you enough, right? There's not enough time in the day for your spouse to give you enough. You probably have exhausted pornography. Now you're out there figuring out what other options are, hiring help and support, right? And now you've increased the risk of sexually transmitted diseases for you and your spouse.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about infidelity, right, there's 4 different categories. You have the one night stand, addiction, number one. Number two, you have emotional involvement. Number three, you have sexual compulsion. Number four, you have the open-ended relationship or the marital void. So two are relational, two are physical, some are hybrid. But when you're dealing with the one night stand sex, you know, I went on a business trip and I met somebody at the bar, or I'm seeking sex out in a prostitute, or I'm on vacation and what happens there stays there. You know, that is an example of multiple partners with this desire that you can't control, or sexual compulsion. You don't have to go anywhere. To your point, I just have this craving, this urge, and you know what? I want more, I demand more, and my wife is not willing to give me, or my husband, because it goes both ways, folks. Absolutely.
But it is technically more frequent with men, according to statistics. But yes, women can have it as well. And it's interesting that the Association of Psychological, the people who actually like determine who gets addictions, they do not really want to say that sex addiction is a real actual addiction. And the reason for that is because their fear is that people who have actually healthy sex drives, that just like to have a lot of sex, would be demonized and kind of categorized with everybody else having an addiction. Because there are people out here who do not have sex addictions that are unfaithful, that have cheated multiple times, that are doing whatever it is that they want to do outside the bedroom, and technically don't have a sex addiction. It's some other issue, but not necessarily a sex addiction.
That's a good point, and that speaks to the video. One of our most popular videos is the hidden addictions of an affair. And while many people have a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, it's a sex addiction, well, no, there are other addictions that may lead to sex. And I would encourage you to search that on YouTube to find out more about that, because it could be, you know, the source of the problem that either you or your spouse is dealing with. Anyway, guys, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We're talking about the 10 signs of sex addiction. We'll be right back to unpack more. Stay right there.
Welcome back, everybody. You're watching the Couples Academy show, and today we're talking about the 10 signs that are of sex addiction. And I want to jump over here to some of the comments. Angel says, good morning. I'm the girlfriend of a man who has a sex and porn addiction. I follow you every day. I'm excited to hear your video and interested in helping for being betrayed, trauma victim, and my partners need help.
See, it's a very common thing, folks. And if you think you're on an island all by yourself and you're the only one going through this, best believe by the time we get through with this series, you will realize, man, maybe we have this struggle and didn't even know it. But knowing is half the battle, because at least you can do something about what it is that you know. Yes.
We got another comment here from Save Dunn, who says, Last Chance Weekend, designed to help you get closer, and understanding transparency helps us must see or must do, right?
There it
because
is.
you want to actually come here to our beautiful estate where we have prepared everything that you need to help you overcome your relationship issues. We got a couple more comments in here. Kristen here says, he looks women up and down in public, saying he's just looking at what they are wearing, and I am too worried about what he is looking at. Should this behavior not bother me?
It should bother you. You know, in our book, what book was that? Oh, Pimpin' from the Pulpit to the Pews, Exposing and Expelling the Spirit of Lust in the Church. There's a chapter in here, in there, entitled Overcoming the Lust of the Eyes. And in there, we talk about window shopping and how oftentimes we go to the mall and, we're not going to bring any money. We're just going to go window shopping. And so the reality is when we do go, we wind up purchasing, because something we had no intention for, we now developed a desire for, because it consumed our eyes. And once it consumed our eyes, then the desire was built up, and then we began to pursue. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to go out and pursue women because he's looking at them. But the point is, if we consider these behaviors as, no big deal, it's just innocent. Well, it may not be a pursuit of that particular one. But if I'm constantly looking at women up and down, seeing what they're wearing, looking at the shapes of their bodies, imagining, it creates a desire for something possibly that I may be seeking outside of my relationship.
You know, and some people say, I'm just a people watcher. You know, I just like watching people. I like watching people. We talk about this all the time. We'll go to the park and we'll sit down and we'll just watch people walk by and things of that nature. However, if this is offending your partner, it is a problem. If you're looking at the opposite sex and that's what you focused on every time and what they're wearing and what they got going on, all that's going to do is breed a lot of insecurity in your relationship. So it's a problem, something that he needs to get under check. We have another comment here from Marie. She's saying, spouse chose to communicate and have sex with persons of a different race. Any reason for that?
You would have to ask your husband. I mean, some people are attracted to all types of people. They're not specifically committed to just one type of person or ethnicity or culture. Some people find beauty in all cultures, colors, dimensions, sizes, everything. So unless there's something else to that, you know, Why We Hate Black Women and Why We Should Love Them. That was a book I wrote a few years ago. Phenomenal book. You need to get it. And in there, we talk about how some people do pursue people outside of their race, specific types of people, because of sexual stereotypes. Okay, so there's a certain stereotype that comes along with, for instance, being with an Asian woman, being with a Latino woman, being with a black woman, being with a white woman. And sometimes that sexual curiosity causes them to pursue what they feel like they don't have. There's so much stuff that we've done over the years that we need to talk about. We're going to have some deep conversations, folks, because I'm realizing that these are real issues that people are dealing with, and we need to take the time to unpack them. But get the book, Why We Hate Black Women and Why We Should Love Them.
Let me jump to this last comment before we get back to the points. Angel here says, there's a thing called betrayal trauma that the partner gets from the partner that causes the betrayal, pretty much. And it's like PTSD, and it's called post-infidelity stress disorder. That's what you're talking about. It also has not been officially diagnosed, but it is recognized among others, and they will say that yes, as a result of the betrayal, now you have a form of PTSD, which is because of the betrayal.
That's absolutely right.
All right, we can jump back into the next comments here. What's the next one, Hassani?
The next point?
The next point.
Oh, okay. Number 2, we're talking about the 10 signs, right? So number 2, the second sign, it's neglectful of his or her responsibilities. So similar to any other addiction, sex addicts often put their desire for sex ahead of family commitment, job responsibilities, and pretty much anything else that isn't sex related. And this can lead to financial difficulties, job loss, and even divorce if the neglect continues to spiral out of control.
Yes. Now, I was listening to this video about this where there were several people that they were following who, it got so out of hand for these. One guy who's a corporate man, he would leave his job in the middle of the day to go and see his women. It got to the point where he was doing this on a regular in the middle of the day, leaving the job to go meet with women at hotels, that he actually missed a very important meeting and ended up getting fired.
Wow.
Right? Things like that happen, right? Because you get to the point where you forget about what really matters, and all you're focused on is the drive. Every day is consumed with this desire to meet the need, right?
Yeah.
And so everything else falls by the wayside. Your family, your children, every obligation as a result of it, your job even. And ultimately you spiral down into a disastrous situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to go to the third one?
Number 3, indulging in trade-offs for sex. Okay, so almost all sex addicts are willing to trade their time and currency, particularly when illicit sex is the end game. The sexual cravings are too strong to resist, which means that sex addicts are often willing to part with their hard-earned cash and any spare time they get to satisfy those urges. So that makes me think about neglecting the family, right? A lot of times you're working, 9 to 5 every day. But what happens when you got a ball game to go to with your kid, and that's interfering with you meeting your sexual desires? It's a hang up.
So it's a trade-off. So when you hear trade-off, what I hear is transaction, right? Sex should be relational, not transactional. So in essence, I will so now the bed becomes a bartering table from which all transactions are made. This is what we refer to in Black Lives, Black Guys in Bedroom Life as the flesh cash connection. I'm going to trade in or trade off cash for sex, or services for sex, or favors for sex, or I will trade off time spent with family, to your point, for sex. And so in this type of dynamic, you have two people who are seeking something very specific, not necessarily each other, but what each other has access to. And that becomes the sexual dynamic that exists for this particular sex addict.
Wow.
It's a serious situation, and it's something that, here's the reality. A lot of people have engaged in this type of behavior before marriage. And so we think we get married and that's somehow the cure to promiscuity, the cure to excessiveness and over-sexualized behaviors, because now everything I got before I do, I can get within my marriage. And we have these false assumptions that really don't work. And then we wind up in crisis because we feel like we were duped. This is not what I signed up for. Well, did you actually discuss it? How many couples who have sex before they get married never truly discuss sex before they get married?
Into it.
Yep.
Absolutely true. And so now you have the expectation, right? If your relationship began transactionally, right? So that's how it began. It was always like that. Take me out to dinner. I give you a little sugar. You know what I mean? Now you've really set the stage and the foundation for how this relationship goes. But if somebody's struggling with sexual addiction, now whatever you're offering isn't enough. I mean, I've encountered folks who are struggling because their spouse wants to have sex 5 and 6 times a day. 5 and 6 times a day. I mean, that's a lot.
That's a
now,
deal.
I mean, listen, put something in the chat if that's your norm. If that's your norm and you're getting it in 5 and 6 times a day, I really want to know.
I want to know.
And then I also want to know, what's your norm? Like, can y'all just put it in the chat? Like, what is the normal amount of sex? What do you consider to be normal in your marriage? Because honestly, it's going to help a lot of people kind of gauge, okay, what's going on under their roof. Because everyone has a different situation under their roof, what works for them. But when it gets to the point where you are pulling on the life source of a person, every time they turn around, they got to get in the bed, that is an indication that something's wrong under your roof. And what ends up happening is that when that spouse can't satisfy those urges, they will go and find it someplace else.
Absolutely. And this is the crisis that couples wind up in. And this is when infidelity happens. And then it's just like our entire world is shattered. How do we fix this? How do we turn this thing around? And it's problematic.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, like, how many, to your point, how many people are actually communicating about it as opposed to just, well, he or she is not going to give me what I want, so I'm going to go get it someplace else. Like, are you actually giving your spouse the opportunity to say what they are capable of? Because I've also known women who have said, you know what, I'll go 3 times a day. Let's go. Maybe it's a communication issue because, again, what did I read? Something like actually 6% of people that have been told that they were a sex addict were. It's about 6%.
Wow.
It's not a lot of people that they are saying are actual sex addicts. Okay.
This is interesting, especially if associations don't diagnose it as an actual
they
thing.
Won't.
So
no, it's the National Association of Psychiatrics or something like that. They are really reluctant to diagnose sexual addiction and make it official because of the fact that what about people with healthy sex drives?
Yeah.
Now they'll be thrown in the pot. So, but they're saying the reality is it's not as many as we think that actually have these sex addictions. It's people I hear who have been exposed to too much pornography, internet, and opportunity, social media. There's all these things that are making it so that people are doing things that they typically would not do, but that they're not actual sex addicts.
So let's talk about it, because we do know that there are levels to one's sex addiction, and that's why we put that sex addiction test in the actual description of the video. Let that be your homework, and we want you to, matter of fact, you don't have to come back and tell us what the results were. That's between you, your spouse, and your household. But I think it's important to be aware so that we're all on the same page, because as you go through the questions, it will reveal to you, wow, I never considered like that. Wow, this is giving me insight on what's happening in our household. And at the end of the day, if the sexual craving and urge and desire is causing a problem in your marriage, in your household, it's worthy of a conversation. Man, we're running out of time. I do want to acknowledge for Sean. He says, do you guys take donations? And the reality is for quite some time, this has been an expense that we have taken on because we wanted to provide the service. But we are transitioning into that. We will talk more about that because we have a vision of where we want to take this show. And we want you to be a part of it. We have received donations from people and we're blown away by people's generosity. And we said, you know what? People are looking for an opportunity to give, an opportunity to get behind something. And so we'll share more information about that. But guys, stay tuned. Part 2 is tomorrow. This is going to be an interesting week. We're going to unpack a lot. So this is what you've been waiting for. So come and get it. Come and get it. Come and get it. See you tomorrow.
See you guys.